Thanks for joining us today. This is Nate Schoemer, professional dog trainer, and I'm going to be answering some common questions. Since these are common questions, you may already know the answer to a lot of them, and if that's the case, just go down to the description and jump to the section of the video that has the questions that you would like to learn a little bit more about. So the first question is going to be, what is the first thing you try to teach a dog when training? The very first thing that I like to do with any dog that I'm training, it doesn't matter if I'm training basic obedience, service dog training, protection training, search and rescue, you name it. The process is always the same. The very first thing that I like to do is engagement training. I want to teach the dog that I'm going to pay them and there's value to being engaged and focusing on me. If your dog is focused on you, they're going to be able to learn much faster. Another thing that I really focus on is getting the dog to enjoy the training. That is probably even more important than the dog learning the markers. We're teaching them the markers in the very first session, so those condition reinforcers, the sounds that predict the rewards, but we want to make the training fun and we want to teach the dog how to learn. So we want them to enjoy it. The more that they enjoy it, the more likely they are to enjoy it when they get older, and the easier it's going to be to teach them new behaviors. So do everything you can to make the training session fun. It should not be stressful. I've heard other people say you should focus on precision first, obedience first, and attitude later. I completely disagree. I want my dogs to enjoy the training, and that's something else people have asked me. They say, how is your dog so focused on you? Every time I see the video, even when you're talking, your dog is focused on you. And they're focused on me because I always made training fun. Ever since once I have them as a puppy, I'm working with them, I'm building them up, I'm doing confidence building exercises, and I'm making the training as fun as possible. If I can, I try to make the training the most fun that the dog will have throughout the day. I make that the absolute best. So every time you're getting ready to train, it's something that your dog has been looking forward to. So that's going to be the first thing that I like to focus on. I want to make sure the dog is having a good time, and I want to teach the dog the markers. So those sounds that predict the rewards. Remember, this is based on the studies that were conducted by Ivan Pavlov, the Russian psychologist. This is the dinner bell theory. He had a sound that would go off prior to the food being delivered to the dogs, and after a certain amount of repetition, each dog varied, the dogs would begin to salivate before the food was even present, and that's what he called classical conditioning. If you think about it though, all he really did was he renamed a word, and the word that he renamed was predictability. But he's a scientist, so he has to come out and say, I came up with something new, classical conditioning, and all he did was renamed a word, predictability, because he did further studies. If the sound went off while the food was being delivered to the dogs, or if the sound went off while the dogs were eating the food, then they never became conditioned to the sound, because at that point it has not become predictable because the sound is being paired. Remember, it has to be predictable. So that's that first step, teaching our dog the condition reinforcers that we can use in our training to help communicate more effectively with them. Okay, next question. What's the best way to train a kid to handle a puppy? What's your best advice when it comes to kids and dogs? So I've worked with a lot of families that have kids, and more often than not, the kids learn faster than the adults do. They pick it up and they start applying it right away. So you want to teach them how to train the dogs the same way I teach in these videos. Show them how to do the markers. Make sure they understand that they shouldn't be pairing their physical with their verbal. Show them how to properly pet the dog. That's a big one. Especially really young kids, they don't know how to pet a dog properly. If you know how to pet a dog properly, the dog's going to want to be around you. And that's something that may come naturally to adults, and that's something you have to show a young child how to do, how to pet the dog in a way that the dog's going to like it and it's going to be a nice experience for the dog. And then teaching the child everything else, how to start shaping behaviors, how to lure the dog into different positions, how to properly feed the dog. If I'm working with, let's say, my niece or my nephew, I'm going to show them every single step that I teach an adult how to train their dog. I'm not going to say, oh, you're a kid, so I'm not going to pay that much attention to what I'm showing you. I'm just going to show you the simple basics, bare bone I'm going to show them as much as I possibly can, as long as they're interested in learning about what it is that I'm teaching them. And like I said, more often than not, the kids do better than the adults. So teach them the markers, teach them how to lure the dog with food, teach them how to handle the leash properly, show them every single step, and also teach them that they need to respect the dogs. I think it's great to get a dog for a kid, but it's also important to teach them how to train that dog. Often kids don't realize how much work is involved in raising a young puppy or a dog. But if we empower them and we show them how to train and work with the dog, then you'll find that they have a best friend for life, and it'll also teach them compassion. All right, the next question. I have 3 dogs. What is the best way to work with all 3? If I'm training multiple dogs that I want to be able to work and do obedience at the same time, first I'm going to train each dog separately. I'm going to work with each one. I'm going to teach them the communication channels. I'm going to teach them what behaviors are expected from them. I'm going to teach them how to turn off pressure by complying. That's that leash pressure training. And I'm going to build their confidence up and get them to work in areas with more distractions. And then as each dog becomes proficient in the obedience, then I start to bring them together. If I'm working 3, first I'm going to bring 2 together. I'm going to have 2 work together, and then the other 2 work together. And then as they all start to understand that concept of doing obedience while they're with one another, then I bring all 3 into the picture and I do everything again. Each time you add a new element, it's almost like you're starting over, because the dog is looking at it at a different situation, or they're looking at it rather as it being a different situation, and dogs are very situational. So the dog goes, well, I never have to do obedience normally when the other dog is here. It's only when it's you and me and we're in the backyard and you have your training vest on and you have the treats. That's when I do obedience, not right now. So you have to show them, no, right now you have to do it as well. And you have to do it in this environment, and you have to do it in that environment, and you have to do it if there's 1 person watching or 20 people watching or 10 dogs or 20 dogs. You have to show them in every single environment until they become generalized to the training. And for most dogs, it's usually around 8 or 9 when they get to that point where they are generalized to it. So 8 or 9 new environments, 8 or 9 new different distractions, 8 or 9 different command, like let's say for example the climb command. If you teach the dog to only climb on 1 platform, then that's only going to be the 1 climb that they know. But if you teach them climb means to climb on their bed, climb means to climb into the vehicle, to climb in on a park bench, to climb on a rock while on a hike, a big boulder or something like that. We start using these climb commands in different situations, and the dog will become generalized to it. So again, to answer your question, we train each dog individually, then we bring them all together for that final product. I was just made aware of fear periods. I was wondering if you'd consider doing a video on how to work through this positively. Okay, most dogs do go through a fear period. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to try petting them and rewarding them for being afraid. So if the dog starts to become afraid, you don't want to take the dog and go, it's okay, shh, it's going to be all right. Because basically what you're doing is you're telling the dog, it's good to be afraid. That's a good dog. You should really be afraid. Good dog. I'm going to reward you for being afraid. Remember, when we are rewarding a dog, we are rewarding a dog for what they're doing in that moment in time. And that's why our markers are so important, because we're able to pinpoint a moment in time to let the dog know they're doing something that we like. So instead of doing something like that, what I like to do if I start to notice a dog is going through a fear period and there's certain things that are triggering the fear, then I will try to do positive association, or if the dog is already afraid of something, we could do counter conditioning. And all that's doing is taking something that the dog is afraid of because they think it may predict something bad, and instead making it predict something pleasant. For example, if a dog was afraid of fireworks, I'm going to slowly get the dog comfortable with the sound of fireworks while rewarding the dog with maybe a treat or maybe their meal time. I'm actually going to be putting a video up just on this. So if you have a dog that's afraid of fireworks, now is a great time to start. What I like to do is every single meal up until the point where the dog, until the 4th of July, what you're going to do is we have YouTube, so fantastic, pull up YouTube, pull up a video of fireworks going off, and then play the fireworks going off before you feed your dog. So play the video, then place your dog's food down and let them eat. Start at a very low volume, and then as the dog gets more comfortable eating with that sound going off, then slowly increase the volume up into the point where it's almost as loud as it can be right before the 4th of July. So then when fireworks start to go off, you have conditioned your dog to realize that fireworks actually means something pleasant. They're going to get a reward. They're going to get a treat. We add value to it by what it predicts. That is the most important thing. For example, my dog Ari, she went through a fear period where she was afraid of other people. She would bark at them, her hackles would go up. Lucky for me, I have a lot of dog trainer friends, and what I did for 2 weeks, I didn't feed her. Me personally, I did not give her any food. She still ate every single day. But what I did was I would meet up with my friends that understand dogs and they're dog trainers, and I would give them each a certain amount of food to feed to my dog. So that would be my dog's meal. And at first, they just stood there casually, acting like they weren't even paying attention to her, holding the food down by their side, and then she would come up and take the food from their hand, almost as if she was stealing it. So they weren't being frontal, they weren't doing these normal behaviors that humans do when they see a dog. A lot of times we become very frontal. We're like, oh, that's a cute puppy, and we get really close to them, and that can be intimidating to some dogs, especially dogs that are going through a fear period. So by not looking at them, that takes away a lot of that pressure. And that's what they did. And then as my dog became more comfortable and her confidence started to go up, they started to turn a little bit more, they started to become more frontal. And then by the end of the 2nd week, she was so excited to see every single one of them because they predicted something nice. This is the most important thing when we're dealing with a new dog or a puppy and we're raising them. We want to take every experience and we want to make it positive by having it predict something pleasant, whether it's food, whether it's a toy, whether it's petting. But again, you don't want to pet them when they're acting fearful. You want to reward them when they're not acting fearful. And if you try to have your dog presented by something and they're acting too afraid, then you need to back off a little bit and have it to where they're more comfortable. So let's use the fireworks for an example. If I turned on the computer and I played that video with fireworks going off and I played it too loud and it startled my dog, then I would have to turn it down because it's too loud. I need to start where it's not going to be intimidating the dog, and as my dog becomes more comfortable with it, we're desensitizing them to it, but we're also teaching them that the sound predicts something pleasant. Think about it imagine if I worked with you, and every single day, it's like you could take anything and you can make it be pleasant by what it predicts. So let's say I was just some annoying coworker and every day I went up to you and I pinched the back of your arm. You're really gonna get annoyed with me and you're not gonna like me one bit. But imagine if every single time I pinched your arm, I handed you a $100 bill. You would be looking for me to pinch your arm. You'd be like, come on, you want to pinch my arm? I want that $100 because of what it predicts. We change what it means by what it predicts. And it's the same with our dogs. I have a 10-month-old border collie. We watched your videos. Do you have any tips on getting him to focus? He's very hyper and distracted even after exercise, and we find it difficult to get focus on tasks. I can only use his basic kibble to train because he gets so excited. So if you progress too quickly in training, it's always good to go back steps. So if I'm working with a dog and I'm on my 2nd step in my training, so my 1st step is always teaching the dog the markers, getting them to enjoy the training. 2nd step is always showing them how to perform the behaviors I would like them to perform with a physical cue. 3rd step is naming those behaviors by making sure we say the name of the command before the physical cue. And then I like to teach the dog the concept of leash pressure so they know how to turn off pressure by complying, which actually increases their confidence and speeds up the training. So if I have a dog that I'm working with and I'm on my 2nd step where I'm starting to name the command and I'm losing focus from my dog, I'm gonna go back to engagement training. I'm gonna show the dog that they need to pay attention to me, and I'm gonna work that a little bit longer to get my dog to understand the concept of looking up at me in order to get that reward. A lot of times dogs won't naturally look at us in our face. We have to show them like, hey, looking at our face is a good thing. And not only is it a good thing, I'm gonna reward you for that. And then it's going to be something that our dogs are going to seek out a little bit more. I have a video entirely on teaching our dog the markers and how to get them more focused. So if this is something that you're working on, check out that video. I think it'll help you out quite a bit. Our beagle barks when one of us come home. We tried ignoring him, but he seems to carry on even more. Any tips for this? Anytime our dog is doing a behavior we don't like, we always have to think about the concept of motivation. Everything our dogs do is based on motivation. They're either motivated to access something pleasant, they're motivated to prevent something unpleasant, or the activity itself is fun and that becomes the motivation. So if you come home and you're trying to think, well, what is it that my dog wants? Does my dog want my attention? Is my dog just barking because barking is fun? If your dog wants your attention, one of the techniques that you can use is when you walk inside, if the dog starts to bark, say one no and then leave. Show the dog that barking is going to make you go away. If your dog wants you to be there and is barking out of excitement, if your dog learns that barking makes you go away, then they'll quickly stop the barking. So what I'll even do, and I'll do it very, very quick. So I'll start to walk away. The moment the dog is quiet, I turn back around. If the dog starts to bark again, I go to leave again. And I continue this until the dog understands it's the barking that makes me go away and being quiet is what brings me to them. We always have to think about that concept of cause and effect and how it's going to affect our dog's motivation. Now, if this doesn't work and your dog still continues to bark, we have to think about the concept of using positive punishment. This is the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning: positive and negative reinforcement, positive and negative punishment. It just depends on what you want and what you want to do with your own dog. But if you're not able to redirect the dog to a different behavior, if using the no and leaving and showing the dog that them barking is making you go away is not working, if your dog simply enjoys barking because barking is fun, then you're going to have to use a correction to remove it from the dog's repertoire. And the easiest or the best way to do that is using a leash and a collar. I never recommend using your hands to correct a dog because our hands should always be a good thing. It should always be a positive thing. But if the dog is barking, you say one no, you would take the leash, you would give the dog a leash pop. The moment that they're quiet, you go, yay, good puppy, and you reward them for doing what it is that you want. Anytime we correct a dog, if you do have to correct your dog, and I'm not telling anybody to correct their dog, you don't have to. You can get a lot from your dog by implementing 3 of the 4 quadrants. You can use positive reinforcement, negative punishment, which is not giving your dog a treat if they don't perform the behavior correctly, and negative reinforcement, which is leash pressure. You don't have to use positive punishment. But if you find yourself struggling and you think it's going to help, then you can use positive punishment. You want to keep in mind the analogy that every single dog has their own bank account. Some of our dogs are rich, some of our dogs are poor. So imagine you're driving down the highway, police officer pulls you over, writes you a 25-cent speeding ticket. That's not going to be enough to change your behavior. You're going to continue to speed. But let's say on the other extreme end of the spectrum, he writes you a $250,000 speeding ticket. Now you're going to avoid the behavior entirely. You're not going to want to drive. You're going to be stressed out. You're going to take a lift from now on. That's an avoidance level correction, a correction so high you would avoid the behavior entirely. Let's say he gives you a $200 speeding ticket. That's enough to get you to slow down without getting you to avoid the behavior of driving. It's the same with our dogs. If you're going to use a correction, so in this situation, the dog barks, you say one no, you give the dog a correction. The correction should be adequate to that dog's bank account. You don't want to correct too high, you don't want to correct too low. You want to do it right at that dog's working level or correction level. So the dog gets the correction. Again, the moment they're quiet, we praise and we reward them. It's important to reward a dog after you correct them the moment they're doing exactly what you want them to be doing. But that's going to be some of the best ways to fix a dog that is barking when you come home. Because again, they're barking because they're excited to see you and they want you to be there. So if you show them barking makes you go away, then we are hoping that the barking will stop. How to keep my dog in a stay position when I answer the door. He is nosy and he wants to see who's out there, and if it's someone he doesn't know, he will growl and he'll start to bark in a mean sort of way. If you have a dog that barks at people walking by or barks at people when they come over, then you need to rehearse the situation. So have somebody that you know come over, or anytime one of the family members are coming over, have them text you and let you know that they're about to be there, and so you can be ready to work with your dog and take advantage of that situation. We have to practice what we want our dogs to perform, and we have to practice every single situation and show our dog exactly what we want them to do in that specific situation. What I like to do is use the climb command. Again, the climb command is the easiest command to reinforce. It's the easiest stay command to teach, and it's very easy to implement using it in training situations just like this one. So you have somebody that you know knock on the door, and if your dog reacts, then you make sure you direct them back to the climb, and then you go answer the door. And you keep doing this over and over again, getting the dog desensitized to somebody ringing the doorbell or knocking on the door and showing them exactly what they need to do. So that would be staying on the climb stay. And I have a video exactly how to teach the stay, and it doesn't matter what kind of stay I'm teaching: sit stay, down stay, climb stay, stand stay, heel stay. All of the stays, the process is always the same. We show them the position If we want to reward them, we use the continuation marker, or we can give them verbal praise. And then if they break the position, we say one no, and we place them back into the position they just broke. So we're showing them, if you mess up, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to fix it. And when we do that, then the dog learns how to turn off pressure by complying, because when we're reinforcing a position, in a sense, we become the pressure. So the dog breaks a position, you say no, now your dog goes, oh, I know what you're about to do next, and they go back to the climb bed on their own. But the best thing you need to do, or the most important thing rather that you need to do, is practice it, rehearse it. So then when somebody does come over, your dog knows exactly what to do. We are moving from a rural area to the city. We have people walking up and down the sidewalk in front of our street constantly. How do we stop the dogs from barking at them? Okay, so again, we need to think about motivation. What is motivating our dogs to bark? Some dogs, again, will bark because they enjoy barking. Some dogs will bark because they actually think that their barking is getting people to go away. That goes back to the cause and effect. This is why so many dogs bark at the male person. The male person comes over, drops off the mail, the dog barks, the male person walks away, the dog goes, I made that person go away. And that reinforces the behavior of barking. If we're looking at issues, we have behavioral issues and we have obedience issues. Behavioral issues is anything that the dog does that is not related to obedience. So the dog digs, I don't want the dog to dig. The dog drinks out of the toilet bowl. The dog gets into the trash can. The dog jumps up on people. The dog chews on furniture. These are behavioral issues. Obedience issues, the dog doesn't come when I call him. The dog doesn't stay in a down. The dog doesn't sit when I tell him to sit. These are obedience issues. When it comes to behavioral issues, the fastest way to remove them is by using a correction. So you have a few different options. You can redirect the dog to a different command. Every single time they bark at somebody going by, you redirect them to maybe the climb across the room where they can't see people, or you redirect them into a down. You have to redirect them to something. Or the next option is you correct it. You remove it out of the dog's repertoire. You have a leash, you have a collar on the dog, you have somebody walk by. The moment that the dog barks, you go, no, and you give the dog a correction. The moment they're quiet, you praise and reward them. So there are different options, and some work faster than others, some may take longer, and some may not even work on certain dogs. That's why it's so important to understand the science of dog training. The science of dog training is, well, everything our dogs do is based on motivation, and humans are the exact same way. We always do whatever is most motivating. Our dogs are no different. We have to make sure that we control the motivating factors, which will control the dog's behavior. So if the dog enjoys barking at people as they walk by and you want that to be removed, either you can redirect, or you can teach the dog when they see another dog, you quickly get their attention. The moment they look at you, you reward them. So then you show them, if you see a human walking by or another dog, what I want you to do is quickly look at me, and then I will give you a reward for that behavior. And then what you'll find on a long enough timeline, the dog will be looking for people walking by so they can look at you to get a treat, which is much better than barking. Again, that's using the motivation. The dog wants the treat. The dog knows that looking at a person and then looking at you predicts the treat, so then they repeat that behavior. And then, like I said, the other option is using a correction. So the dog's motivation not to get corrected overrides the motivation to bark at the dogs walking by. This is the same reason why most people choose not to rob the bank. The motivation not to go to jail overrides the motivation to make a quick buck. So we always have to keep in mind what is motivating our dogs, and then we can use that information to apply the right technique to get the results that we want. What would be your 5 top medium-sized breeds for service dog work? Any dog, any breed rather, can be a service dog, and breeds will help give you an idea of what the dog's going to be like, but every dog is going to be an individual dog. I really enjoy training labs. I enjoy training golden retrievers, standard poodles, German shepherds, border collies. These are all phenomenal dogs when it comes to teaching them tasks, because they're highly intelligent and they love to make their owner happy. They love to please their owner or whoever it is that they're working with. They're usually very motivated, very fun, intelligent dogs to work with. The border collie one, I wouldn't recommend somebody having a border collie as a service dog unless they are very active. So maybe a border collie would make a great PTSD service dog with somebody who is not physically disabled, meaning They can walk, they can run, they can do things like that, but they're struggling with PTSD or some sort of other condition, and they're able to go out and they're able to stay active with their dog. A border collie could be great for somebody like that because they can play fetch, they can do a lot of great activities, and the dog can still provide services that will help this person who's suffering from PTSD. So that's something to keep in mind. What is it that the dog is going to be doing? How much drive do you want the dog to have? Again, like I said, border collies usually have more drive, they usually have more intelligence, and if you don't stimulate that mind, they can become destructive. So we just have to keep in mind what the dog is going to be for, but those are my 5 top dogs, I guess I would say, for service dog work that I like to train. What are the best treats for dog training? Okay, the best treats for dog training is going to be what your dog enjoys and what is healthy. I don't like giving a lot of those sugar-filled treats that you could find at a lot of the local pet stores. My go-to is freeze-dried dog food. Most dogs love it and it's very healthy. So find a treat that not only is something your dog enjoys and they're willing to work for, but something that is healthy. You can also use the dog's kibble. If I am feeding a dog kibble, I like to get a better quality kibble. I wouldn't like to feed something like kibbles and bits. That's horrible dog food. I wouldn't like to feed any dog Beneful. That's pretty junk as well. You need to read the label on the back. If there is, you don't want dog food that has byproduct. A lot of byproduct isn't good. Meal isn't good. If it says beef meal, you don't want anything. You want whole animals. You want whole chicken, whole beef. You don't want a bunch of rice. You don't want a bunch of fillers. And if they have colors added to it, you definitely don't want those. So like Beneful, for example, if you look at the label, you'll see near the bottom that it has blue number 2, green 3, red 4. Avoid those foods. You can also use a website, dogfoodadvisor.com. They give a star rating for the dog foods based on the quality of the food, where it's coming from, how much protein it has, how much fat, and how many carbohydrates. And they give the star rating based on the type of food. So for example, if you see a raw food that is 4.5 stars and then you see a kibble that is 5 stars, that does not mean that the kibble is better than the raw, because the raw is rated up against other raw foods. The canned is rated up against other canned food. The kibble is rated up against other kibbles. So you have to keep that in mind. Raw is almost always better than kibble. But if you are feeding kibble, look for one that's a 5-star brand, and that's going to be a much better quality and it will make a great treat. What would you say are the key principles to keep in mind every day when you train your dog? All right, the primary principles when training a dog is going to be timing, motivation, and consistency, but also making the training fun. I said this earlier in the video, the more fun that your dog is having, the faster they're going to learn and they're going to look forward to training, and training is going to be a very pleasant, enjoyable experience. I recommend, if you have a dog, I recommend training that dog for life. A lot of time people think, oh, I get my dog, once my dog knows all the behaviors, I never have to train them again. Training is an activity that not only should be fun for your dog, but it also helps create a very strong bond. This is something that people always say if I train their dog, they say, it seems like our dog likes you even more now. It's like, well, yeah, for the past 2 weeks, I've been talking to your dog. We've been hanging out. I've been communicating with them. The dog's like, finally, somebody who speaks my language. And when you communicate with them, then you build a stronger bond. You need to talk to your dogs every day, and training is one of the best ways to do that. Making the training fun. Timing is very important. It's been scientifically proven that we have approximately 1 second to influence a dog's behavior. So if you are 1 second off, when a dog is doing something you're trying to capture, you could be teaching the dog a completely different behavior. So timing is very important. That's why we use our condition reinforcers. Those are the sounds that predict a reward. So when our dog does a behavior, we have 1 second to either give them the primary reinforcer, or we have 1 second to give them the condition reinforcer, and then follow it up with the primary. Remember, the condition reinforcer predicts the primary. This is going to be my yes and my free when I'm training my dogs. Those pinpoint a moment in time and they predict a reward. This is very similar to money or paycheck for a human. Money and a paycheck, cash money and paychecks, those are condition reinforcers because they predict the primary. If I gave you $10,000 and I said you can never spend this ever in your entire life, you can never give it to anybody, you can never use it, it just has to sit in your closet, it becomes worthless. It has value because of what it predicts. You can go buy what you need. You can go buy food. You can buy toys, electronics, whatever it is. that is a condition reinforcer. For our dogs, it's a sound that predicts the reward. So when they do a behavior, if we cannot get them the primary reinforcer within a second, then we use the condition reinforcer. So the dog's butt hits the ground, yes. The dog knows that they're gonna be rewarded for their butt hitting the ground, and you can come and take your time to give them the reward. And even though the reward may have come way after the dog did the behavior, the dog knows whatever they were doing when they heard that sound, that is what they are being rewarded for. And that helps us with our timing. So timing, very important. Motivation, I talk about this all the time. We have to figure out what motivates our dog. That's why dog training is an art and it's a science. You have to understand the science in order to master the art. But you master the art by figuring out the dog that you're working with. How intelligent is this dog? How much perseverance does this dog have? Dogs with higher level perseverance will be willing to work harder in order to get the reward. Dogs with a lower level of perseverance may give up earlier. So you have to be aware of that. Does the dog enjoy a certain type of treat? Does the dog enjoy playing with toys? What can I use to get this dog motivated to perform the tasks that we are trying to teach them? So motivation, very important. And then consistency, could be the most important, probably is the most important, is consistency. Because even if your timing is off, even if you don't have the best motivation or the tools to get the dog to perform, if you are consistent every single day, your dog will learn. So consistency then is the most important. Timing, motivation, consistency, and make sure that the training is as fun as possible. Never train when you're in a bad mood. Always make sure you're in a great mood. Your dog will feed off of that and make the training fun. Again, that's something I do with my dogs. That's why they love training so much. That's why when you see my videos, Charlie looks like he's just happy to be there. He's super excited. Ari is excited to train. It's because I made training fun. And you could do that too with your dogs. What is your opinion on feeding a raw diet? I think a raw diet is the best way to go. A resource that I recommend everybody check out is Dr. Karen Becker. I also recommend watching the documentary Pet Fooled. That's Pet, F-O-O-L-E-D. And a raw diet is biologically appropriate for our dogs. They have more stomach acid than we do, so they're able to process it. They get more of the vitamins, more of the minerals. Both my dogs, Charlie and Ari, are both on raw, and they do fantastic on it. I feed them, what I give my dogs is I give them raw food, so I feed them twice a day in the morning and in the evening. And then on Sundays, I fast them, so I'll only feed them one meal on Sunday. I give them raw bones, so those big thick raw bones with the bone marrow on the inside and the raw meat on the outside, I give that to them as a treat and it helps keep their canines clean. I also give them freeze-dried dog treats, and I will also give them bully sticks. So that's mainly what my dogs consume, and they're in great shape, they're very healthy. Most people overfeed their dogs as well. You're less likely to overfeed your dog if you're feeding them raw. When I feed raw, I weigh out each meal so I know exactly what I'm giving my dog. And this is a good point to bring up why a lot of people have overweight dogs. And one of the main reasons is when you have them as a young pup, their metabolism is much higher and you have to feed them way more. For example, Harley right now that I'm training, she is on a kibble and I'm giving her 6 cups a day. So she's eating 6 cups a day. That is more than what Ari and Charlie eat combined, but it's because she's growing. So what a lot of people will do is they will continue to feed their dog that 6 cups a day, even when they become an adult, and then they wonder why their dog's getting fat. It's because they're feeding them too much. So you have to adjust according to your dog's metabolism and according to your dog's age. But to answer your question, I think raw, hands down, is the best way to go. I like to buy pre-made raw pet food. You can make raw food or you can prep raw meals yourself. But if you're going to do that, I would recommend doing the proper research, because if you're not doing it correctly, you can cause more harm than good. That's why I'll just buy raw dog food at the pet store and my dogs love it and it works great. And some people will even say it seems like it could be inconvenient to feed raw. It could be a pain in the butt. I give the raw food to my dogs frozen. I just take it out of the bag, out of the freezer, and I give it to them frozen. It takes them a little bit longer to eat it, and it's cold, so the cold speeds up their metabolism, which keeps them at a nice healthy weight. So raw, I think, is the best way to go, but it can be a little expensive, so keep that in mind. My German Shepherd heals beautifully when I have a ball in my hand, but I'm having a hard time weaning that out. Any suggestions? Okay, every single dog starts off as a reactive dog. We want to teach our dogs to be a proactive dog. And the way that we do that is we teach them that their behaviors have an effect on their environment. What most people do is they will take their dog, they'll get their dog out to train, and they will use treats, and they'll get the dog to perform the behaviors, and they'll reward them. Well, the tricky part is how do we get our dogs to do it when the rewards are out of sight? And there's a very easy way to do that, and that's by implementing a technique known as free shaping. So all free shaping is you don't have anything in mind you want your dog to perform, but when your dog does something that you like, you mark and you reward it. So you have treats on you, you don't let your dog know that you have the treats, and you just wait for your dog to do something that you like. Some people will make noise to get the dog to look at them. So you might go, brrr, dog looks at you, you go yes, and you give them a piece of food. You didn't ask them to look at you, you simply made a weird noise and the dog looked at you and you rewarded them for that. Or your dog goes and lays down. You like your dog laying down on their bed, so you go yes, and you go give them a treat. Your dog sits, yes, and you give them a treat. You're not asking them to perform any of these behaviors, but you're telling them, I like when you do that behavior and I'm gonna reward you for it, even though you didn't see the treat. And on a long enough timeline, your dog is going to start to realize that they can make rewards happen. So even when you don't have a treat, they might come up to you and go, oh, I'm sitting, is this gonna get a reward? And often I'll still say yes, and I'll walk into the kitchen and I'll grab one of their treats and I'll give them the treat. And again, even though that treat came several seconds after the act of the behavior that I was capturing, my dog knows whatever they were doing when they heard that sound is what they're getting rewarded for. And we have as long as it takes to get the reward to the dog, as long as the dog is paying attention to what's going on. So it could be 10 seconds, it could be 20 seconds, it could be even a minute. I've had it to where my dog did a behavior, I used the terminal marker, I did not have my treats on me, and I walked into the kitchen and I couldn't find the bag of treats, and I was looking all over for it, and my dog was following me. She's like, I know you're gonna get me a treat. I know you're gonna get me a treat. You said the free. I found the bag, I opened it up, I gave her the reward, she made the connection. Now, if they lose focus, they get distracted by something and you give them, so let's say for example, you're walking towards your dog to give them a treat and they see a squirrel. They go squirrel and they look at the squirrel and you reward them. Now you're rewarding them for the squirrel. So you have to make sure that they maintain that focus. But going back to the original point, do the free shaping, get your dog to understand that they can make rewards happen for themselves. That creates a proactive dog. Then I would also recommend watching the 10 fundamental steps of a focused heel that I teach, because at first we are using food, we are using luring, we can use toys to get the dog to maintain the position, but we want to start asking for that behavior with the toy out of sight. We don't ask for a lot of steps in the beginning, maybe a couple, and we have the dog looking up at us and we reward them. This is much easier to understand the concept if you watch that video, so I recommend checking that out. And as your dog gets better, you add more duration, and then the reward can come out after the dog has been performing the behavior correctly. But it's taking the proper steps to get that picture for your dog and taking the time to make sure your dog masters each step before moving on to the next one. So again, check out that video. How do you deal with dogs whining in the crate? Okay, how do you deal with dogs whining in the crate? There are a few ways to deal with this. Again, think about motivation. So what some people will do is they will ignore the dog or the puppy while they're whining. The moment they stop whining, you give it a couple seconds, then you reward the dog and you let them out. So you're showing them, if you whine, you're gonna stay in the crate. The dog wants to come out. Usually that's why they're whining. So you show them when you're quiet, then I'm going to let you out. That can work. Some dogs, it's harder to do this technique on because they can whine for a very, very long time before they'll even give you 5 seconds of silence. If that's the case, this is an option that I like to use. I pick up a metal bowl from the pet store. If you have one, great. Leave it on top of the crate. And when the dog or the puppy goes to whine, you say one no, you walk over to the crate, you grab the bowl and you go bing, and you tap the top of the crate. And then you walk away. If the puppy whines again or the dog whines again, you say no, you walk back, ding, and then you go to walk away again. And you do it just like that. You don't do it with any sort of anger or aggression in your voice. It's a no, it's simple cause and effect. You're telling the dog, if you whine, I can't control myself. I'm gonna walk over and I'm gonna take the bowl and I'm gonna hit the top of your crate. And it's gonna make an unpleasant sound. That's what you're doing. You're creating an unpleasant sound. And that again goes back to predictability. If the dog starts to understand that if they whine, it predicts that you're going to hit the top of their crate with a metal bowl, they quickly stop whining. So that is a really great technique. If you're okay hitting the top of the crate with a metal bowl. Don't worry, it does not traumatize the dog, and you're not doing it aggressively. It's a simple bing and you walk away. Like I said, the other option is you wait till they're not whining and then you reward them for not whining, and you don't reward them when they're whining. I'm having a hard time truly understanding when to do the yes reward marker or break or free marker when training. Could you please clarify? Okay, so our markers, our condition reinforcers, I hit on this already a little bit in this video. Every word that we use has value based on what it predicts, or it means to our dog what it predicts. If I say no to my dog, but it doesn't predict anything, then no means nothing to my dog except for a sound. If I say yes, but it doesn't predict anything, then yes is just another sound. It's what it predicts. So if we're looking at this, I use yes as my continuation marker. You can use whatever word you like. A lot of trainers use yes as their terminal marker, but it's important to define what these words mean. A continuation marker is pinpointing a moment in time when our dog is correct, but they have to maintain the position. This is if you want to reward a dog, but you also would like them to stay in the sit stay, for an example. You tell the dog to sit, the moment their butt hits the ground, you go yes, you go over and you reward them. And they have to stay in the sit because it is a continuation marker. It's continuing that specific exercise. And then free for my dogs is a terminal marker. A terminal marker is a combination of a marker and a release. So it is telling the dog you're correct, you are released from this position, and you can come and access your reward. It doesn't matter where the dog gets the reward. In the beginning, when I'm teaching the terminal marker, I say the terminal marker and I move away, encouraging the dog to jump up and get the reward. I'm showing the dog that it's a release and reward by doing this sort of motion. Once the dog knows and understands the terminal marker, I don't have to get the dog to jump up to get the reward. For example, if I'm luring the dog into a down, I can lure the dog into the down the moment they lay down free, and I release the food, I give it to them, and they can get up. They don't have to jump up to get the treat. I do that in the beginning to teach them that it means release and reward every single time. And then my break is simply a release. You can teach the break the exact same way you teach the free. You can even give them a reward every single time if you want, and then you can just stop giving the rewards. Now, the break in the beginning, if you're doing it that way, you're treating it as a terminal marker. We can quickly reduce the value of a marker if we stop rewarding the dog. That's why I tell people, if you say yes or you say free to your dog, you better give them the primary reinforcer, because it only has value because of what it predicts. If you start saying yes and you're not giving the reward to your dog, the value is going to quickly decline. I had a student that kept using their continuation marker and they weren't rewarding the dog. And I said, how come you're not rewarding your dog? Isn't that your marker? And they said, yeah, but look how happy the dog is. And I said, yeah, the dog's happy right now because the dog thinks that he's going to get a reward. But if you keep doing this, the value of your yes is going to go away entirely. It's not going to mean anything. We could do that with anything. Let's say, for example, you trained a dog in scent detection and you taught the dog to indicate on a certain odor and you wanted to remove that odor. You didn't want to reward the dog anymore. Well, you present that odor to the dog and you simply stop rewarding the dog, and eventually the dog will stop indicating on that specific odor. So we can take away the value that way. And the reason why I'm saying that is you can teach the dog the release and reward by using the same concept as the terminal marker. And then once the dog knows they can jump up afterwards, then you just stop giving them a reward. They'll still know that break means they're released, but then they'll quickly learn that it no longer means they're going to get a reward. So it won't have the value of a terminal marker, but it'll still be a very easy way to teach the release. What I usually do though is I just go break, yay, good puppy, and I encourage them to come to me and then I pet and reward them. That's how I teach break. It's very easy. And this actually brings up another point, because this is something that is commonly asked, is how do I get my dog to know their name? And some videos will tell you to have a treat, say your dog's name and give them a treat. Say your dog's name and give them a treat. I don't recommend doing this. Number one is you're turning the name into a condition reinforcer. And then number two, if it is a condition reinforcer, let's say, for example, you did this exercise with your dog and now your dog is conditioned to their name, meaning when they hear their name, they think they're going to get a reward, and they think that when they hear their name, whatever they're doing in that moment in time is something that you like. So let's say your dog is in the backyard, you can't see your dog, you're looking for them, but they're digging. They're digging a hole, and you go, hey, Fido. Fido goes, oh, there's a sound that means I'm going to get a treat, and Fido comes running over and you give Fido a treat. You just rewarded your dog for digging. So that's another reason why I don't recommend taking the dog's name and then giving them a reward. Instead of what should I do to get my dog to understand their name, what's more important is what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't use your dog's name as a sound when you're upset at them. So it shouldn't be, Fido, get over here. Fido, no. Fido, bad. Fido, this. Always make their name positive by not necessarily having it predict a treat, but for any situation. So if I call my dog, Ari, good girl, Ari's a good girl, or Charlie, good boy, buddy, very nice, Charlie, and I'm rewarding them and I'm saying their name, that's going to be a great way to do it. But I do not want to treat it as a condition reinforcer because I don't want to say their name and mark a behavior. I don't want them to perform by accident. Okay, so that's going to be our markers. We also have a non-reinforcement marker, and that's for mistakes. So if my dog makes a mistake, if I tell them to sit and they lay down instead, I say wrong. That means that's incorrect. You're not going to get a reward, but I'm going to let you try it again. So just to recap on the markers, continuation marker simply means they're correct, but they have to maintain the position. That's why it's called a continuation marker. The terminal marker is terminating the exercise and it's predicting a reward. So it's inherently, or it's essentially a release and reward. And then our break is just a release word. And then our non-reinforcement marker just lets the dog know they made a mistake and they're not going to get the treat, but they could try again. How can I stop my dog from barking at other dogs and people when outside or on a walk? It's not alerting or aggressive bark. It's more like wanting to visit and play, but it gets annoying. Okay, I've talked about this before in some of my other videos. You want to use the concept of counter-conditioning or desensitizing the dog. My favorite way to do this is I like to take the dog to a local dog park, but I do not take the dog into the dog park. I get far enough where my dog can see the other dogs, but not close enough to where my dog can engage with them. And then I just do obedience. I get my dog to understand that they need to work when there's other dogs or there's distractions. Now this is going to be a little bit down the road after my dog already knows the obedience, has fun training, understands the commands, knows leash pressure, etc. Then I'm going to take the dog there and I'm going to start healing with my dog. I'm going to do sit stays, down stays with the park in the background, pretty far away. As my dog gets better, I'm going to slowly start moving the training over time, maybe over a couple weeks, maybe over a couple months. It depends on the dog. And I'm going to move closer and closer to the dog park where the dogs are and where the people are walking back and forth until my dog understands that it's no longer a big deal. There's no need to bark at them because that's not going to get access to the dogs. And it's going to be better to be training and working with you. So again, we're using the concept of desensitizing the dog by exposing them to it over and over and over and over again to where it's not a big deal. And then counter-conditioning. So counter-conditioning, all counter-conditioning really is, it's taking something that the dog may have one perspective of, like they may feel a certain way about it, and you change the way they feel about it by making it predict something pleasant. So you make it predict fun, you make it predict play, you make it predict a reward or something like that. That's kind of what counter-conditioning really is, simply put, or reconditioning is also what it's called. And that's going to help a great deal. And if you're doing this and you're seeing results and then you go back to your neighborhood and you're walking your dog and your dog still starts to bark at other dogs after you've done all that other training, it's because your dog's not generalized yet. Your dog thinks that it's not okay to do those behaviors when you're outside of the park and you see all those other dogs walking back and forth, but it is still okay to do it in the neighborhood. If that's the case, then you basically have to do the same exercise in the neighborhood. But by keeping distance, again, that's going to make it easier for your dog to understand what's going on, and then you move closer and closer to what they become reactive to. So sometimes you may have somebody help you with this, somebody you know who has a dog that is really chill and relaxed, or sometimes there might be a neighbor that has a dog that barks at people walking by, and you can use that as a distraction. But really, if we're going to simplify it, desensitize them by exposing them over and over again, and doing the obedience and getting the dog closer and closer to it as they become better at it. And if they still continue to bark or they still continue to act out, this is when a lot of people would give the dog a correction. So they're telling the dog, I've shown you what you're supposed to do. I've given you a very clear path to success. I've taught you how to turn off pressure by complying. You're still acting out this behavior, so now you're going to receive a correction for it. And that's very fair. And a correction, again, is just a leash pop. So that's what a lot of people will do. And then the dog will quickly realize, okay, barking at these other dogs, barking at these other people, that's not a fun experience. I'm going to direct my attention back onto you, and then you would reward them for that. Is it bad to give my dog too much freedom in the house? She opens the door by herself, enters and leaves when she wants to. She's also stubborn and will only listen if I have food. Lastly, she whines if I don't reward her right away while training. Okay, so giving a dog freedom in the house, Bethany said it best in the podcast that I did with her. She said, it's not a problem unless it's a problem. And I completely agree with that. This goes to anything we're allowing our dogs to do. So for example, I allow my dogs to sit on the couch. I allow my dogs to sleep on my bed with me. They hang out pretty much everywhere I go. And like I said, it's not a problem unless it's a problem. If I have a dog and I allow that dog onto my couch and then I tell my dog to get off the couch and the dog growls at me, the dog starts to resource guard the couch. Now it's a problem, and now I'm not going to allow my dog to be on the couch. I'm going to correct that behavior because that's not an okay behavior, and I'm going to adjust accordingly. So a dog having freedom in the house, my dogs have total freedom in the house. They can do whatever they want, and it doesn't make them think that they're the alpha over me or any of that other nonsense that you might hear. They're completely fine because they know when I do give them a certain command, I make sure I follow through and they do that command. When I leave to go to the park, I use the climb command and they'll stay on my porch until I open my door to my truck, and then I'll release them and they'll run and jump in the truck. They're very obedient. So by allowing them on the furniture, that's not going to ruin the training, and it's not ruining my training. It's the same with everyone else's dogs. If you start to realize that you're giving your dog too much freedom and your dog starts to act out in a way that you don't approve of, then you can start taking some of those privileges away. And you also said that your dog only listens when you have food. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier in the video about free shaping. You need to do free shaping with your dog. You need to get your dog to understand that concept of being proactive. And that's by simply rewarding your dog when your dog is doing behaviors that you like, when you're not asking them to do them. So your dog sits because your dog wants to sit, you reward that behavior. On a long enough timeline, that will create a proactive dog, a dog that will actively start working you to make rewards they don't see magically appear. And that's one of the best ways to create a proactive dog. And then your dog is going to start doing behaviors whether or not you have a reward in sight. She whines if I don't reward her right away while training. Okay, so that right there is almost telling me that you are rewarding her while she's whining. Don't reward her. Do not give her a treat when she's whining, because if you're giving her a reward while she's whining to stop her from whining, you are rewarding that behavior. You're rewarding a bad behavior. Do not reward bad behaviors. Here's another example of rewarding a bad behavior if we're talking about the dog being on the couch. If I walk over to a dog that's on a couch and I ask them to come off the couch and they growl at me and I go, ooh, you growled at me, that's pretty scary, I'm gonna leave you on the couch. I just taught that dog that they need to growl to get people to go away and leave them on the couch. So we never want to enforce bad behaviors, and if a dog's whining and I reward them for whining, I'm rewarding that whining. The dog's going to continue to do it. So I would wait till the dog stops whining. Once the dog stops whining, then I reward the dog. Definitely don't ever reward a dog for doing a behavior you don't like to get them to stop that behavior. That's only going to make it worse, and they're going to keep doing that behavior because they know that it gets them a reward. Can you address some age-specific expectations concerning the recall and duration of skills in different environments? I don't worry too much about the age. I look at every dog as an individual and I adjust according to that dog. But it does make it a little bit more difficult if this is the second, maybe third dog you've ever had or you've ever trained or ever worked with. You don't have a very large frame of reference. Most dog trainers have trained dozens of dogs. Some have trained hundreds of dogs. So they have a really huge frame of reference and they know how long it should take based on what they're seeing from the very beginning working with the dog. I can work with a dog one day and I can have a great idea of how fast that dog is going to learn, how long it's going to take to teach it to stay, how long it's going to take to teach it more advanced behaviors, because I've seen it dozens of times before. But for a lot of people, they don't have that. And what I recommend doing is filming yourself while you're training. Film yourself while you're training to make sure you're not pairing your markers, to make sure you're not pairing the physical with the verbal when you're teaching a verbal command. look at yourself and look at all the mistakes you're making. You're going to be your own worst critic. If you watch the videos and you start to realize you're making all these mistakes, then you have to adjust your training. But if you're training and you're watching the video and you're doing it beautifully, your markers are great, your timing is great, your delivery is great, then it could just be the dog. Some dogs simply take longer to learn than others. But with my own personal dogs, I never worry about how long something is going to take because I like to train my dogs all the time. I think it's something that everybody should do. You should train your dog as much as possible, even into their senior years, because it's fun for them. It stimulates the mind. It's a way for them to engage with you. It builds that relationship. It makes everything better. So with my own dogs, I don't worry about it. I don't worry about how quickly they're gonna learn the stand command when I say stand. I don't worry, I just do it. I keep doing the exercise until my dog starts to do it. And I'm like, awesome, my dog has it, great. And then I keep training and I have fun with it. So don't stress yourself out too much, expecting too much from your dog. Train, have a good time, have fun, and you will start to see results. Film yourself to make sure you're not making a lot of common mistakes. What would you recommend for socializing during the pandemic? And how would you go about introducing a puppy to existing animals, specifically cats? So socializing during the pandemic, that is difficult unless you know people, you have friends that you trust and you can go to their place and they have dogs. When it comes to socializing a dog or a puppy, what I'm more concerned about is exposure. Exposing the dog to lots of different environments, exposing the dog to lots of different people, exposing the dog to lots of different dogs, but not necessarily having the dog interact with a bunch of people or interact with a bunch of dogs. I want them to see them, but realize that they're not a big deal. They don't have to go say hi to every single person or every single dog. This is why a lot of times when somebody is working or training a service dog, the vet says do not pet, this dog is working, because when you're training a service dog, that dog needs to be focused on the handler. That dog cannot be looking for rewards from every single person that walks by. So it's exposure. And then when I am introducing my dog to a human or another dog, I want to make sure the human knows how to properly communicate with a dog. I'm going to get one of my more dog savvy friends. I'm not going to have my dog socialize with one of my friends who are awkward and they've never been around a dog and they don't know how to act around a dog, because that's not going to help the development. I'm going to have one of my friends who's not going to reward my dog for jumping up on them, who is going to understand not to put too much pressure maybe on the dog if it's a young puppy, or knows how to play with the dog, etc. We want to have the dog have a positive experience. Every single new experience should be positive. So if you have friends that are willing to do that, that's a great way to socialize your dog with other people. And then with other dogs, I like to find dogs that are not going to try to be dominant over the puppy. I never want an adult dog to make a young puppy submissive. Contrary to popular belief, it's not about having a submissive dog, but rather having a confident dog. So I never let an older dog make a young puppy become submissive. I don't want that to be the default behavior if my dog doesn't know what to do, to just lay over on its side and become submissive. That's not a good behavior to try to teach your dog. So I'm going to have a dog that will allow the puppy to play with them, and they're going to be a great experience for the dog, and it's not going to teach the puppy to become submissive. So finding the right dogs. Of course, I don't want my puppy to interact with a dog that's going to be aggressive or a dog that might bite or snap at the puppy, because then that could be a very terrible experience that could go on with the puppy for life. And now you have a dog that grows up and is fearful of other dogs, cautious around other dogs or whatever. So you really want to control all the social interactions. And then the next part is, how would you go about introducing a puppy to existing animals, specifically cats? That is a interesting question because there are so many different variables. It depends on how the cat is. Some cats are great with dogs and the puppy can play with the cat and they become best friends. Some cats are going to hate that a dog is entering the house, and the dog might, or the cat might avoid the dog or whatever. So it's going to depend on a lot in this situation is how the cat reacts to the dog. If the cat wants to meet the dog and it's a friendly, nice cat, then I'm gonna let them interact as long as the cat doesn't become aggressive towards the puppy. That's a great time to introduce them, again, knowing how the cat is going to be. I don't want the cat to become aggressive towards the puppy because, again, that's going to be another bad experience. If you're worried about that, then I would just use the whole concept of positive association. Dog sees the cat, I get the dog's attention, I reward the dog, or the puppy. The puppy sees the cat, I get the puppy's attention, I reward the puppy. So then I'm showing the puppy that oh, look at the cat. There it is. If you look at me, I'm going to give you a reward. Now I've created a positive association to the cat, and hopefully everything is great and smooth. If I start to see signs of aggression towards the cat, then I correct that. I don't tolerate aggression towards a cat in the house because, especially if the dog gets older, a dog can potentially kill a cat, and I've seen it before. It's not fun. So if I do start to see any sort of aggression coming from a dog or a puppy that I'm raising towards a cat, then I correct it. I use a physical correction because, again, this is for the safety of the cat. I do not want the dog to think it's okay to be aggressive towards a cat. So that's going to be the steps that I'm going to take when it comes to introducing a puppy to a cat. It's going to depend on the cat. If the cat is interested in the dog, if the cat is friendly, I'll let them interact and hopefully they become best friends. If the cat's aggressive towards the dog, or if the dog becomes aggressive towards the cat, then I'm going to correct the dog. Or if the cat is aggressive towards the dog, then I'm going to keep the dog away from the cat. Okay? I'm still trying to get my dog to let me pet her head. How should I proceed from here? How should I convert value to being pet and help her enjoy it? Okay, if you have a dog that is a little cautious with being pet, then I'm going to use the same concept I would for any other behavior that I want the dog to repeat. I'm going to treat it as a behavior that I'm rewarding, no different from a sit or no different from a down. So I'm going to get the dog to first look at me, and I'm going to reward that without touching the dog's head. Then I'm going to slowly start bringing my hand closer to the dog. As long as the dog maintains focus on me, I'm going to reward. And I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm going to get my hand closer and closer and closer and closer up until the point where I can actually touch the dog. Then the dog's looking at me. I give the dog a little pet. Yes, reward. The dog's looking at me. I pet him a little bit. Yes, reward. The dog's looking at me, I pet him a little bit more, yes, reward. And then I'm showing the dog that this is something I want you to do, it's pleasant, and you're going to get a reward for it. This could take a little bit of time depending on if the dog may have had a bad experience in the past, so you're going to have to be patient with it, but using positive association is going to be the best way, in my opinion, to get your dog comfortable being pet, and you're taking the time to do it correctly and still getting that engagement from your dog, having them look up at you, and like I said, slowly getting to the point where you're able to pet them and then reward them for that. Don't expect a long pet in the very beginning. Make it short and sweet. Build your dog up through success. The more success they have, the more confidence they have, and the easier the exercise will become. I have a 9-week-old Dutch Shepherd, and it's very determined to nip fingers, toes, ankles, pants, legs, etc. The cuteness wore off pretty quickly. I tried yipping like a hurt puppy, which worked for a little while. Saying no has no effect. Rewarding him when he's laying nicely doesn't seem to register with him that nipping isn't allowed. It's pretty frustrating. Hope you can offer a good approach. Thank you. Okay, again, when we're looking at a dog doing a behavior, we have to think about what is motivating them to do that behavior. There's a few techniques, few known common techniques to stop puppy biting. I'm actually going to put a video up just on this, and I'm going to demonstrate with a puppy. But the first one is to redirect the dog to something that they are allowed to bite. Now, puppy biting, from my experience, they grow out of it. It's the same as a child sucking their thumb. Most kids will grow out of it. Every now and then you might have one that continues to do it, but eventually everybody grows out of it. It's the same with our dogs. Puppy biting is a part of their development. They're exploring the world, and that's how they do it. They do it with their mouth and with their teeth. So we can redirect them to a different toy. Now look at the activity and why the dog is doing it. If the dog is biting you because it's fun, and that's part of the reason why puppies bite, especially Dutch Shepherds and Malinois, they want to bite everything. And this is why a lot of protection dog trainers, that's their go-to breed for protection training, because it's easy to build upon that. But if the dog continues to do it, we redirect it. It's not removing the value of the dog biting your leg or your arms. It's just giving your puppy a different option. And eventually they're gonna grow out of it. It's not, like I said, it's not stopping it, because let's say your arm, for example, is a toy to your dog. Your dog sees your arm as a toy. Yay, this toy is fun to bite. And then you give it something else that you would rather the puppy bite. Puppy's gonna go, oh, this is a fun toy. And if that toy goes away, your puppy's gonna go, oh, there's the other toy, and go back to biting your arm. Again, it doesn't stop the behavior of biting your arm or your pants or anything. It just gives the puppy a different option, and you wait till they grow out of it. This is an excellent option if you don't mind constantly redirecting your dog to a new toy. I never correct my dogs for biting when they're puppies, and they always grow out of it. However, there are 3 other techniques if you do want to remove it entirely. One is neutralizing it. I've talked about this before. Neutralizing it is simply making it no longer a fun experience. So if my puppy goes to bite my hand, I grab their lower jaw. So I grab the soft tissue underneath the chin and the soft tissue inside. They go to bite and I grab it, just like that. And I hold it until the puppy pulls away. I'm not squeezing, I'm not pinching hard, I'm not trying to make it hurt, I'm just holding the dog. So I hold the puppy and the puppy's like, this isn't fun, I need to get away, and they pull away. That's going to usually get most dogs or most puppies to stop biting. We are neutralizing the experience. We are saying it's no longer fun. It's not painful, but it's not fun. Another option, this is not my preferred go-to technique, but a lot of people use it. The puppy will go to bite and they will push the puppy's lip on their own teeth. I don't like to do this because I don't want to cut the inside of my puppy's mouth. I don't want them to feel pain with this because they're just exploring their world, and I want every experience to be positive. I want every experience to be fun. So I don't like using this option, but what it does is it takes the experience and it turns it from being a fun experience into a negative experience, so then they stop doing it. This would be the same as if a puppy bit a cactus. Ouch, the cactus hurt. I'm not gonna bite the cactus anymore. Puppy goes to bite your hand. Ouch, that hurt. I'm not gonna bite your hand again. And then the last option is you have a leash, you have a collar on the puppy. Puppy goes to bite, you go, no, and you pop the leash. The moment the puppy stops biting, you go, yay, good puppy. So then you're showing the puppy, I don't want you to bite my hand. If you bite my hand, there's gonna be a consequence. When you stop, I'm gonna quickly reward you for it. So it would look exactly like this. No, correction, yay, good puppy. That quick, it's that fast. So those are gonna be the main ways to dealing with puppy biting. And if you need to correct it, then those options, I like the grabbing option. It's the nicest, it neutralizes it, it doesn't cause any pain for the puppy. If I want to stop it and that's not working, my next option is popping the leash. But my go-to, my preferred every single time is to let the puppy grow out of it. I enjoy it. When I have a puppy, when I'm raising a puppy, everybody knows because my arm has scratches all over it because I let them play. I have fun with it. It doesn't bother me. And if you don't mind redirecting it to another toy, that's also an excellent option and a great way to help your dog through those developing stages. Okay, 3-year-old terrier mix just recently started obsessively digging to chase moles. I'm never able to catch her in the act, therefore I'm not able to redirect. I have tried setting her up to fail so I can redirect and reward, but she is smart enough to not do it in front of me. Suggestions. When it comes to digging, you're exactly right. You either have to set the dog up to fail so you can correct them the moment they make the wrong choice and you can show them what it is that you want them to do. If you're unable to catch them in the act, then you do have a couple other options. Some people will try to show their dog an area in the yard that they are allowed to dig, so then they have a location as an outlet. Some people will say you need to exercise your dog more. If your dog's not getting enough physical and mental stimulation throughout the day, then they're going to find other means to be able to satisfy those needs, and often digging can be one of those options. But let's say your dog is getting plenty of physical exercise, they are mentally stimulated, you're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing, and yet your dog is still digging in the yard. Well, digging can be a fun activity. This is known as a self-rewarding or self-reinforcing behavior. If that's the case, you have to catch the dog in the act, you have to redirect them to what it is that you would prefer them to do. Or you can also create a deterrent. What some people will do is they have different sprays and things like that that you can buy that you could spray in the yard that is supposed to create some sort of like a citrus or something that the dog doesn't like, and so they stop digging. That creates a deterrent, so the dog hopefully won't dig even when you're not there because it's no longer fun because of the spray. Another option is, like I said, you have to catch them in the act. If you can't catch them in the act, or if you're saying it's because when you're out in the yard, your dog's not going to do it, then what some people will do, and I'm not telling anybody to do this, but this is what some trainers, what some people will choose to do, and you can get results from it. So it depends on, you know, how far you want to go in order to fix this behavior. But using a remote training collar, some people will get a remote training collar, they will place that on the dog, they will set a camera up, often they'll FaceTime, so using their spouse's phone or something like that. That way you could be inside, you can watch your dog. The moment the dog starts to dig, you give the dog a correction. The dog comes running inside, you go, what happened? Did the dirt bite you? Did that bad dirt bite you? And then hopefully the dog stops digging because you created a negative association with digging. So those are going to be your main options. You create or you do more exercise with your dog, so hopefully you're giving them that needed stimulation so they don't dig. You create a deterrent by using one of those products that they sell that you can spray in the yard. You give your dog a different location in the yard where they're allowed to dig. I don't recommend that option, but anyways, it's something that some people do. Same thing with the remote collar or using a leash and a long line and catching the dog in the act or redirecting them to something else you want to do. Those are going to be the ways to fix it. There's no magic trick to do it. You just have to make sure you catch the dog in the act and you show them exactly what it is that you want them to do. My 9-month-old German Shepherd does good on leash walks with me, but when I try to walk him with my kids, he pulls and starts barking in excitement. How do I stop this behavior? This goes with anything. As you start adding new distractions, you want to do it slowly and you don't want to add a bunch of distractions all at one time. So having the entire family, that each individual becomes a new distraction and it's a new experience for the dog, so it could be exciting. So what I would do in that situation is I would have everybody in the family work with the dog in a neutral environment. So inside the house, in the living room, in the backyard, wherever it is you train your dog, and I'm gonna have each family member work with the dog. And then I'm gonna have the family come together and work with the dog. So now the dog being with the entire family and working with the entire family is a normal experience. Then we're gonna take it outside and we're gonna go on the walk. So if you take those steps and you have everybody work with the dog, then it doesn't become this really crazy, really exciting new experience, and you're gonna have control or better control of the situation than if you just try to have the dog jump right into this new situation without getting the dog exposed to each individual experience in a more neutral environment. So doing it again inside the house where it's more neutral, one person at a time, then bring everybody together, then even have one person at a time go on the walk. So maybe you and one other person, then you and the next one. If you have a bunch of kids, one kid at a time, and then your spouse, and then bring the kids. And then, so it's a process. It could take a little bit of time, but it's worth doing, and it creates a great learning experience for the dog. And usually the family enjoys it as well. So that would be how I would deal with that situation. How do I train my dog for public access? When it comes to training a service dog, anytime I'm training a service dog, first, I always start with basic obedience. This is why it took so long for me to release episode 2 of the service dog training in my service dog series. Because the first one was basically all obedience, and I've been working obedience. So I really like to get the dog to understand obedience first. I want the dog to like training. I want to make training as fun as possible. The same thing I do with any other dog, because I want them to enjoy working. The more they enjoy it, the better they become at it and the faster they learn. Then once I have all those communication channels down, my dog knows how to work with me, we've built a great relationship, then I'm going to start teaching the dog those specific tasks that they're going to have to perform to be a service dog. Then I'm going to start taking the dog out into public. When I take a service dog in training into public, I have a vest on the dog that says service dog in training. Now, a service dog in training does not have the same public access that an actual service dog does. But most places will allow you to train that dog to be a service dog because they understand in order to train a dog to be a service dog, you have to take that dog out into public and get it used to being exposed to all these different environments. Now, there are places that you can take the dog regardless of them training or being a service dog, is places like Lowe's, Home Depot, PetSmart, Petco. All those places allow any sort of dog to come into it as long as the dog is not being aggressive, attacking other dogs or people, or going to the bathroom inside. As long as it's a decently behaved dog, you can take your dog to any one of those environments. Now, I take my dogs that I'm training to be service dogs, I like to take them to the mall because there's a lot of traffic in the mall, and I want my dog to get used to, or the dog that I'm training rather, to be a service dog, I want them to get used to seeing different people, seeing different environments. And again, the training vest says in training. So if somebody comes up to me and they say, is that a service dog? I say, no, it's not a service dog, but I'm training it to be a service dog. And it's very clear that I'm training the dog to be a service dog. I'm not trying to take advantage of the system. Anytime I take a service dog out that I'm training, I have my training vest on, I'm working with the dog, and you can tell the only thing that I'm focused on is that dog and that learning experience. I'm not just taking my dog to the store or doing something like that and trying to take advantage of the system, because too many people are doing that and they should not be doing it, because it's going to cause problems to those that actually have to take their dogs out into public. So I'm going to do that, and then if the business does tell you to leave, if you're training a service dog, you have to leave. And I've had that happen a couple times. I'm training the dog in a location, they come up to me, they say, is this a service dog? I say, no, it's not, it's in training, and I'm training it, and they go, sorry, you can't be here, and I say, no problem, and I leave. because they have the right to kick me out if I'm trying to train a dog in their business location that is not a service dog. But like I said, most places allow me to train the service dog in the location, and I've never really had any issues. So that's the way that I would do it. And then once the dog is trained to be a service dog, then they have full public access. You don't have to have any sort of certification for a dog to be a service dog. The ADA has a page on frequently asked questions, and one of those is, how do I make my dog a service dog? Get a note from your doctor that will say the quality of your life will improve by having a service dog. That dog is trained to perform specific tasks that help you with that disability. Then it's a service dog. You know, make sure it's well trained, make sure it's obedient, make sure it listens. You know, don't have that service dog out in public that pulls on the leash, you know, that clearly hasn't had the training that it needs in order to be a service dog. And that's going to be the best way to do it. How long should I wait in between bringing the puppy home and service training? What's the indicator that the dog is ready to begin service training? Once I bring a puppy home, it doesn't matter if this dog is for basic obedience, if it's going to be for a pet, if it's going to be a service dog, if it's going to be protection trained, sport competition, it doesn't matter. Right away we start training. The imprinting stages for our dogs is between the first 16 weeks of their life. So what they learn during that time sticks with them for life. It is the most important time. So every single experience during this time should be pleasant. It should be fun. The training should be fun. You should get the dog to really enjoy it. I know I've talked about that throughout this entire video, but really getting a dog to understand and love and enjoy the training is one of the best things to do. So if you have a dog and you want that dog to be a service dog, start training it right away. Start socializing it right away. Start working with it right away and develop it to really enjoy it, and it'll learn very fast and you'll have an excellent service dog when they get older. How do I increase my dog's ball drive? One of the best ways to increase a dog's toy drive is by doing an exercise called drive building. So drive building, what you do is you take your dog, you place your dog on a harness or an agitation collar. An agitation collar is just a really, really thick collar that they can pull on. I prefer the harness though. You hook them up to a back tie and you tease them with their toy. So if you're using a ball, I would do a ball on a rope and I would tease the dog with the ball. When the dog gets really excited, really wants it, I'm going to reward the dog with the ball. And then I'm going to keep it active by moving the ball by using the rope that it's attached to. I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to make it more engaging. The dog lets go. I'm going to tease it a little bit more. I'm going to go back and forth. The dog shows excitement, interest, then I'm going to reward the dog again. And this will usually increase the dog's ball drive. I'll be making a video entirely on this in the future, so be on the lookout for that. This is what a lot of scent detection dog trainers will do because they want to build that toy drive and use it during training. This is something that protection trainers do all the time. They teach the dog to really enjoy doing that bite work, to bite the toy, and it's an excellent way to build toy drive. The next one is, how do I get my dog to bite harder when playing tug? Using drive building, what we just talked about. Put your dog on a back tie, get them to bite the tug. So what I'll usually do is I'll have the tug maybe even on a rope, and I'll swing it around, swing it to where the dog can catch it. The dog catches it. Once they catch it, yay, good puppy. Then I grab the handles and I'll pull a little bit. And as long as they hold it, good dog, then I'll release, I'll go loose. And what most dogs will do is they'll re-bite, they get a full bite, then I'll pull again, I'll good boy or good girl, whichever dog I'm working with, grab it and work with the dog and have a lot of fun. And if the dog does not have tight enough of a grip, the tug slips out and I tease the dog even more. I go, ha ha, I got the toy, you don't have it now, ha ha. And the dog's like, oh my gosh, I want the toy. And then I reward the dog again, and now they're gonna wanna hold on to it even harder because they're using that frustration and they're not gonna want it to slip out. And this will usually increase the strength in which your dog is biting the tug toy. And again, I'm gonna make a video on this so you'll be able to see this in action in the future. Do you use Kong? Does it serve any other purpose besides a food dispenser? Which toys do you like to use with your dogs? I think Kongs are great. Kongs are excellent. I always use them. And this is something that I even tell people when they're raising a puppy. If I'm raising a puppy, I like to make that puppy work for every single meal that it eats. It increases the value of the food. It makes the training much easier, especially in the beginning. But not everybody has that much time. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be feeding your puppy out of a bowl. So if I don't have the time to train the puppy and have the puppy take the food directly from my hand, I like to freeze the puppy's food inside of the Kong. Now what I use is I use raw dog food, and I stuff the Kong with raw dog food. I freeze it, and then I'll feed that to the dog. and it makes a great meal, and it's also fun for them. It keeps them active, and it satisfies a lot of those puppy needs. If you do not feed your dog raw, what you can do is you can put the kibble in a bowl, you can put some water in it, wait till the kibble absorbs all the water, and then stuff that into the Kong and freeze that, and you can use it in the exact same way. I also use Kongs to reward when I'm training my dogs. What's fun about a Kong is it doesn't bounce in the normal way that a ball will. It kind of flies all over the place, which makes it way more engaging for the dogs. And most dogs that I've worked with, when I use a Kong as a reward, they love chasing after it. It's kicking in that toy drive, it's kicking in that prey drive, and it's kicking in that play drive. And they have a good time. So Kongs are great for that as well. I like to use a ball on a rope when I'm training my dogs. I enjoy playing tug with them. Tennis balls if I'm playing fetch. I also use tennis balls for scent detection. Now, keep in mind with all these toys, I never let my dogs play with the toys unsupervised. First, it lowers the value of the toy, and it's potentially dangerous. The dogs can eat part of the toy, they can eat part of the tennis ball, it can create a ruptured bow, blockage, possibly death. So I never allow dogs to play with toys when they're not being supervised. There's always some sort of supervision, and they're having to work for the toy, again, to increase that value. I enjoy playing Frisbee with my dogs, so I like to use Frisbees as a reward. So those are the main ones. I'll use bite sleeves. My dogs enjoy biting the bite sleeve as well. I've done protection training with my dogs, so they enjoy that. Any sort of activity that they're going to enjoy by incorporating the toys, this is going to be a fun way to build a relationship and bond with them. But to answer your question, those are the toys that I like to use. Kongs are excellent. Another way to satisfy that need to chew and to give them something that is going to be good for their health, I like to give them raw bones. I talked about this as well. The thick raw bones with the bone marrow on the inside and the raw meat on the outside. That makes an excellent reward and treat for them as well. When your dog comes forward off the terminal marker and you hold your hand high to get them to jump for the reward, do you hold the treat in the same way in your hand? Can you guide us through that part, specifically why you have them jumping and how to hold the treat without getting bit by an amped up dog? I always reward them the same way. I cup the food in my hand, which creates that little valley for the dogs to put their muzzle in and get the reward. When you work with a dog long enough, they know exactly how you reward and they know how to get access to that reward. That's how my dogs are. I always reward them that way. So when I release my dog and I have him jump up, I have him do that because there's more energy, it's more fun, and the dog ends up performing the behaviors better because of that release and that reward and that enjoyment that they get from it. So that's why I have them jump. It just adds a little bit more energy to the training. You don't have to have your dog jump out of the terminal marker like I do. It's just something that I like doing with my dogs, and my dogs seem to like it. So that's why I continue to do it. And again, I reward my dogs with the food in my hand the same way every time. So I'm never getting bit when my dog is trying to get access to the food. The only time I've ever been accidentally bit by my dogs is when I'm playing tug and I move my tug too fast or my timing is off and the dog gets my hand. And anytime the dog has gotten my hand, which has only been a few times, it's been my fault because I moved the tug right when the dog was going to bite it. So that's really the only way that I've been bit when I've been playing with my dogs, by accident. Never by food, because they know where it is and how to get access to it. Do you teach the double down? If so, do you use a different command? I want my dog to down regular sometimes, then other times I would like him to lay down with his head touching the floor. Okay, so this is a command I learned when I was going through school to be a professional dog trainer, and it was the Tom Rose School, and Tom Rose called this command ook, because he was a competitive obedience dog trainer. He competed in Schutzen, now called IPO, and one of the exercises is tracking. And the way that he would teach the dogs to indicate on the articles, so this is sport talk, the dog has, when you do competitive tracking with your dogs, you can only tell the dog to track unless they've changed the rules. I haven't visited tracking in quite some time, but you tell the dog to track and your dog has to go out in front of you on a long line and that dog has to do the track. And there's articles on the track, and when the dog gets to the articles, they have to indicate that they found an article. And then you go and you pick it up and you show the judge and you keep going on the exercise. You're not allowed to tell the dog to sit when you think the dog is at the article. You can't cue the dog into the alert for the article. So what Tom Rose did was he would teach the dog in German to track. He would call it Suk, and that's the German command for track. And then he called Ook, which is the dog putting their head down on the ground as if they're laying down resting with their chin on the floor. And he called that Ook. And the way he taught how to teach it was he would just say ook, and then he would place the dog's head down. As long as the dog maintained it, he would reward him. It's a very easy command to teach, and I'll actually put a video up demonstrating how to teach this. This is a good command to have because it's the only way where you can control your dog's head, because even in a down, they can look around. So a lot of trainers will teach them this command, and you can call it whatever you would like to call it. But I've always called it ook as well because that's what I was taught. And this is great if you take your dog to the vet and your dog's getting vaccinated, your dog's head is completely controlled, the veterinarian can do what they need to do, and it makes the process very smooth. So that is a decent command to teach. It can be worthwhile, and like I said, I'll put a video up specifically on how to teach that. Any ideas on how to tire out dogs mentally? My German Shepherd is a high drive dog, and in no way I'm wearing him out with physical exercise. Combining physical exercise with obedience is one of the best ways to stimulate a dog mentally and to wear them out. I do this with my dogs all the time. I make the training fun, and I'm incorporating a little bit of physical exercise as well. So when I take my dogs out, for example, to play fetch, I won't just throw the ball the entire time. I'll have them do commands. So I get the ball, I tell the dog sit, down, spin, center, free, and then I throw the ball. So every time they're doing something in order to get that release and that reward. You can also do scent detection. Scent detection is a great way to mentally stimulate our dogs. I'm going to have an entire series on how to teach your dogs scent detection, so be on the lookout for that. But that's another great way to, again, mentally stimulate your dog, which will help wear them out quite a bit. And then another thing you can do, which I will be putting a video up on, is you can treadmill train your dog. I know you said your dog is very high energy. When you treadmill train a dog, it actually wears them out faster than just going on a run or going on a walk, because they have to maintain a very consistent speed and they have to be very focused on that speed. So that's another great exercise to do as well, which I will be putting up a video on how to teach your dog to run on a treadmill. All right, everybody, I hope this video has proven to be helpful. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And if you can, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that notification bell. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.